Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. And most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak to transportation professionals on this show, as well as my twice-a-week long-form podcast, because I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Tuesday, you guys, we're gonna jump right in. I got a guest on today's show, and he's on the carrier side. He's been on my podcast in the past, and we're going to talk about building actual relationships with people, because that's a term that's thrown out there all the time. But I think that it's a convenience term that's thrown out there, is when it's convenient, people will do it. But when they don't need to, they don't apply it. So with that being said, I got my man, Nick Isabella, back on with Trusted Cartage Solutions. So Nick, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Hey, Chris, good morning. Thanks for having me back. And for everyone out there who hasn't listened to Chris and I's podcast, go back to episode 860. Show it some love. We would like to receive feedback as well. We talked about servant leadership, leading from the front, building relationships, navigating through different freight markets, how to pivot within business, building mental toughness. I think it could be applicable to not only everyone in the transportation industry, but various industries as well.
Yeah, dude, I'm right there with you, right? Because I think, like, it's almost, I don't know, man. I'd love to get your take on this. It's almost like the sentiment out there, and it's kind of been this way, is people just expect this shit to be easy for some reason. Like, they just expect to be instantly successful because they started doing it, or they started making calls, or doing whatever that looks like. I mean, like, that's it. I've had to distance myself from social media here for probably the last, like, almost 2 months. It might not look like it because I still go live, I still do my posts and everything, but I don't spend a lot of time on there, man, because it's just fucking nauseating to read through and see a lot of the shit out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, in transportation, guys, we're picking up from point A and delivering to point B. So let's not make it, too much more difficult than it already is. I know, just specifically on the brokerage side, from working at a larger brokerage earlier in my career, that's definitely not easy. And there's a lot that comes with it, a lot of responsibility. And it's the same thing on the carrier side. But on the carrier side, we actually have physical assets that do go down, do need to be maintained. And we have drivers working within our company that have certain metrics that they need to hit as a company. There's certain metrics that we need to hit as well. And you just have to stay tough. You have to stay solid and figure it out at the end of the day.
So in your trucking company, I want to so you run a distinct region, right? Like, you're very regionally focused in your service offerings. Can you talk about that for a little bit? Because I want a lot of brokers to understand that, because it's almost like they think that it's a fallacy that there's people out there who only run specific lanes 12 months out of the year.
Sure. Yeah, I think now it's more prevalent than ever. Knowing your lanes, and we specialize in servicing just the Southeast. There's 3 states specifically that we like to run: South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. And from my previous broker experience, I know that it always doesn't make sense just to run your truck all over the place. As a trucking company, when we're running specific lanes, it's a little bit easier to recruit drivers. And trust me, there's nothing easy about recruiting drivers at all. Guys want to be home. Guys have to, be back in a certain region, on this day or that day. There's just so much that comes with it. So we specialize in hauling high value, time sensitive freight within the Southeast.
How has that helped you from a business development standpoint, Nick? Like, because again, fortunately, I got a lot of drivers and trucking companies who watch this show. It's almost like an equal split, it seems like, at this point. And what made you focus in on that specific area, and how has that helped you remain busy in an inconsistent market?
What's coming in and out of the areas. You can target certain commodities. and you also know what lane should be paying. So you know whether you're going direct to the shipper and setting up those accounts, what you can charge them, how you can remain profitable as an organization, and how you can help them lower their bottom line as well. Now, when you're targeting different areas of the country, let's just say you're moving something from Charleston to Cincinnati, Ohio, we might not know right off the top of the head what the going rate is. But we know since 2012 what Charleston to Charlotte pays, Charleston to Greenville, Greenville to Charleston, so on and so forth. So that allows us to help build our fleet. And that also allows us to provide great service for either the shippers or brokers or freight forwarders that we're working with, and forming that proper partnership and synergy with them as well. And then when you are running in certain regions from a trucking company's perspective, you also know if the truck goes down in Augusta, Georgia, who to call. If we put our trucks in Springfield, Missouri, I wouldn't know who to call, when the tire blows or a fender goes out or you get hit. I mean, it's just, this is a crazy, crazy game. So we just try to target those specific areas for those reasons.
Was it a conversation with somebody at some point that made you hone things in? Did you speak to somebody who was maybe a couple of years ahead of you in the game and they're like, hey, this is how you're going to be successful. You have to simplify what you're doing, because like my old man always talked about that, right? He always talked about, he liked running the same areas because of when things happen, he knew who to reach out to, he know what to do in those moments. And it's to kind of build up that consistency there. And he always talked about, because my dad's built up his company. I think he had like 6 trucks was at the most, and then he had some shit happen where he just kind of said, "Fuck it, it's just easier to do it for me than it is to deal with anybody else at that time." But he always said he's like one of the biggest errors that he saw out there in the industry was people bought different equipment. They bought different and he was like, you need to have the same trucks, the same trailers from a maintenance perspective, because he always bought shit in bulk, even though he just, for the majority of his career as a driver, he only had his one truck. But man, he would just buy fucking a bunch of tires at one time. I remember we had to load up the back of our pickup, strap that shit down and drive it and keep it in our barn. And he would buy everything in bulk for that reason, where it's like, hey, if something happened, he had an inventory of everything.
Right. Yeah, that definitely helps cut down your cost. I most certainly think we're living in a different time as far as how much it costs to actually, operate a trucking company. Mm-hmm. But when you can buy in bulk like that, when you can buy the same manufacturer over and over and over again, that definitely helps. I'm still a small trucking company right now, continuing to try to grow, so yes, I do have mentors, and a lot of my mentors within the trucking business, they actually run their trucks all over the place because they're looking for longer miles for their guys. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm trying to turn as much freight as we can within a certain area to get my guys home as much as possible, while still adhering to customer standards, whether that be directly to the customer or when we are forming synergy with brokers and freight forwarders. So any way you can try to make the game a little bit easier for everyone, yeah, we would try to do that. But again, guys, I'm still figuring it out. Mm-hmm. I'm only 3 years in this game from the carrier, being on the carrier side. So I'm open to constructive criticism. If someone knows how to do it better, please let me know.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I'm all ears. If somebody can help me do it in a more efficient way, like by all means. So I want to talk about, because you worked on the broker side for a while there, and now you own trucks. You're on the asset side. You're building it up, and I think that in any market, there needs to be, because frankly, man, I'm just sick and tired of all the bullshit between broker versus carrier, yada, 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 that goes on out there. So what stands out to you? What stands out to you as when you're talking to brokers, their quality, this is somebody who I want to work with long-term?
Someone who's responsive, someone who cares about what they're doing, someone who actually knows the customer standards, both on the shipping and receiving side. All right. We want transparency from that perspective. Mm-hmm. We also want the brokers and freight forwarders and customers that we are working with to make money too. Mm-hmm. We understand that the market's going to be soft. It's going to be hot. You're going to have to pivot in certain directions. But most importantly, when we form synergy with someone, we just don't want to run one load with you. We want to help you build your book of business and also give you capacity that's going to be solid month after month or year after year. That's what it's about.
So what how many times do brokers follow up after you deliver a load for them? How often do they follow up with you guys to see, hey, was everything good from our perspective? Are you going to be back there again? Are they following up, continue to try and book your freight or book your truck, excuse me, or is it pretty much like a one and done with some of these guys?
We've been fortunate to find solid partners that do have consistent freight that fall within the lanes that we do run. And those are also the brokers that did follow up, or we did have initial conversations saying, hey, listen, this is where we run our trucks. If we can put our trucks in a certain position for you, would that allow us to go back to your customer and say, hey, listen, we found a trusted partner that we want to work with that can give us consistent capacity at a solid rate. Would that allow you, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, to give us more freight? And quite frankly, that conversation helps out both parties. Now, why more people don't do that, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's the culture that they're working in and they need to make 100 or 150 phone calls, so they just try to get people off the phone as fast as possible. But I also know from being a broker, because I just don't want this to be one-sided. What do brokers need to do better? Being on the brokerage side, trust me, there was a lot of long nights and early mornings of me scratching my head saying, what is the trucking company doing?
Yeah.
What's going on out there? So again, if you're a broker calling in to a carrier, understand what they're doing and come to them with more opportunities in hopes of them getting more business and you getting more business. If you're, a carrier trying to build relationships with a broker, figure out how you can help expand their business or their footprint. Because as a trucking company, we're trying to onboard more drivers and purchase more equipment. And as a broker, you want more freight with the same trucks that are running your freight. So why can't we synergize and figure things out together? I read an article last week about the Knight Swift capacity utilization. They're only at 70%. They're pulling a lot of their assets off of dedicated contracts and going out to the spot market. There's a lot of variables that come into play, but more importantly, this industry isn't going anywhere. So we need to figure out from a carrier standpoint and a brokerage standpoint, how we can sync better.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. And that's why I appreciate what you do on a daily basis in bringing light to this industry and trying to connect everyone who's involved. We all need each other. I don't know of any freight that can be run without trucks running it.
Yeah.
I don't know any freight that can be run if a broker or freight forwarder went to a customer and they didn't get the freight for the trucking company. Again, it takes both parties to come together.
I just think that, because I try and just put relevant information out there that people can actually apply in their business, right? Because again, rest assured, this is what I'm actually doing inside of my business. This is what I've done in my experience. And I'm not trying to put content out there for anything other than just like with you, Nick, dude, I got everything on the line to make this work, right? I don't, there is no fucking plan B for me. And I think that there is, so people make this so much harder than it really needs to be at the end of the day, right? Because I was talking about this yesterday from a business development standpoint alone. When I was looking at the top 100 brokers list, and all of them were back down to the levels of pre-pandemic for the revenue perspective. To me, that shows that there's a massive opportunity out there. That means that nobody did anything differently during that time to capture more revenue, to stand out with customers and everything. And then from a business development standpoint, that's why I'm all fucking gas with this stuff right now, because I'm man, there's so much opportunity that is out there, even in a down market, regardless of what you want to do, there's an opportunity out there and you got to focus in on that. And I think you have to remove yourself from the one and done mentality of I'll just find another customer or I'll just find another carrier. The carriers that we work with consistently are invaluable. They are the reason why, out of all the customer site visits that I've been on so far this year, every single one of them have boiled down to one thing. They're your communication is nothing like we've ever seen. Why are we able to do that? We're able to do that because we are speaking with drivers in depth before we book loads with them. We are laying everything out there to them. And the ones who are yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that. And then they execute upon that in the load. we reach out to them nonstop, because we want to work with those carriers time and time again. Because as a broker, if I can bring that consistency to my customers and I can bring that to my carriers, I'm going to have a really good time as a freight broker at that point. And that's where it's like, again, you are a true partner in those moments. Just like when my carriers are on loads for me and the destination changes or something changes in the load, they don't have to wait to get money from me. They don't have to wait. It's, hey, here's your revised rate confirmation. I'm sending that to you right now. I'll get what I need from my customer. And if it comes down to, and I'm not dealing with this currently, but if push came to shove and I had a customer who's like, no, I'm not paying that accessorial, or I'm not paying for that, I'm going to seriously question if I want to work with that shipper ever again, because it's not my job nor the carrier's job to pay for those mistakes, right? Just like people don't have a problem coming to us with rate reductions if something happens and shit like that, right? So it's like, it's that give and that take, and it's that partnership. And that's what I look for. And that's why it's like when people are out there, like the ability to apply this is out there, but you have to stick with this, right? Like I overpay on my freight. Compared to the open market, I could easily get it for cheaper out there, but I don't want to, man. I want to deliver that consistency to my customers, and I want that carrier to be there for me when things flip, because it's like, it's that short-term mindset that people don't think that this market's ever going to flip. And guess what? You're going to have a really fucking hard time covering freight if you continuously railroad these drivers and these trucking companies time and time again. Who is going to want to work with you here in a couple of months? That's why, again, reason number 8,000 why I'm fucking going so hard on a business development standpoint.
Yeah. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think people have this one-off mindset constantly? Why don't they want to build for the future? Do they not trust themselves? Do they not want others to succeed as well? I mean, I haven't figured that out, Chris. Maybe you have an answer.
My answer is simple: greed. That's what it boils down to, man. It's the, hey, I don't fucking care that we've been making $400 on this load. I want to make $500 on this load. Find a cheaper truck. That's all it really boils down to, man. It's that short-term mindset of how do we get as much as we can today, because we don't know if it's going to be there tomorrow. And what they're failing to see in those moments is you're costing yourself in the future by thinking like that, right? Because it's like, how many times can you go back and think, how many customers have you lost because you bullshitted them, right? Like, I just believe in brutal transparency. I truly do, down to my core. I would rather have a customer fire me for telling the truth than work with me because I'm lying to them about shit. I just can't do that stuff anymore, man. I need to be able to fucking sleep at night. And I've done that shit. And I just think that so many people have the short-term mindset. They got sales managers and leadership who, I mean, I just think that there's such a lack of fundamental experience in this industry, Nick, really, when it boils down to it. Because I mean, dude, I've met people who've been in this industry for a long time. And the fact, and like, I'm not going to go in depth, but the questions that I get asked, it's kind of appalling to me that I'm like, you have a VP title and you're asking that question? Like, what the fuck is your deal, man? Like, have you never made a sales call before? Have you never talked to a carrier before?
Right. It's crazy. I was listening. I don't know if there's any basketball fans on here, but I was listening to JJ Redick back in the day when he was playing in the McDonald's All-American game. And he was arguably one of the best shooters to play in college basketball and arguably the NBA as well. And he said, "You've never arrived. You're always becoming." And he was saying that in the McDonald's All-American game, that's one of the most prestigious high school all-star games in the country that you can be invited to. And what that means is like, okay, great, you got here, but how do you continue to push forward? You got to continue to like move the needle. And it relates to trucking as well. It's like, okay, great, you made some type of margin, moving that load, but can you get that load back, from the customer, or can you get, more freight? Okay, you found a good carrier. Now, how can we utilize more of their assets? Like, just don't jump up and down. You get a big rip, like, great, like move on to the next one, figure out how you can, keep people with you.
Yeah.
Why are you booked? Why do you have 50 loads on your board and you're booking 37 different carriers? Well, there's probably a carrier in that market who has just as many trucks as you have loads. Why can't you make one call? The most successful freight brokers at some of these larger companies, they're on point and click business, with a lot of carriers. They just like, you are with yours. As soon as something hits your board on a certain lane, 4 carriers right off the top of your head who run that every single day. And that's because you actually took the time out to figure out and assess who are the solid carriers, how much capacity do they have, do we align with price, communication, so on and so forth, and then you're able to feed the beast.
Yeah. I also think it helps that I know what I'm going after, right? Like I'm not calling people for the sake of calling them, right? Like I have the confidence in the fact that if any one of the prospects that I'm going after right now said, "Hey, I need this picked up," I'm going to know how to secure the truck. I'm going to know what it is. I'm going to know the commodity. I'm not going to have to struggle with it. And I think that people just try and cast too wide of a net in business from that perspective, man. I think that, when you're out there as a sales rep, if you're cold calling dry van, reefer, LTL, flat, if you're just calling that simultaneously, you're just going to fucking struggle long term, right? I truly feel that you are, because it's too much. There's too much going on at that point. There's too many moving parts that are going on. I think that why I love the simplicity of going after one thing is the overwhelming majority of the shippers and the receivers are all one and the same, right? The requirements are all one and the same. I don't have carrier reps or, my capacity or whatever. Like I'm not talking to different people all the time. I'm talking to carriers that are essentially all offering the exact same service as well on top of that. So it's easier to build up those synergies that are out there. I think that people cast way too wide of a net. And then their whole thing is they don't believe in loyalty themselves. And their whole thing is again, it's, as Micah says here, Micah Campbell says, it's all about the money. It's all about short-term money. And I think that's all people are focused on is when you take it from that approach, like I'm sure we've all heard the thing, man, is the problem with fast money is it comes and goes just as fast. And I also think that another thing on top of that is there's just a basic there's a lack of basic fundamental understanding of what you need to do in this industry, right? Like I was out in Atlanta earlier this year and I got to listen to Nick Saban speak. And if anybody out there wants a phenomenal speaker to listen to Nick Saban talk, because he talks about it all the time. Is that there's so many synergies between sports and business, right? And he mentions it. He's like, we don't practice to get the play right and move on. We practice till we can't get it wrong. And I think that from my perspective, from a simplicity standpoint, if I'm developing and training people, I'm training a sales rep right now, same thing, man, is it's like, here's our approach. This is what we're doing. I'm not calling anybody and asking them for their business. I'm calling in everybody and introducing myself as, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. We understand where the market is. We're here if you need anything. And that's the extent of it. It's not add us to your RFP. It's not badgering these people every single day, because your brand is everything. And people will remember you, good or bad. People will remember you. And I want to have an overwhelming positive experience at the end of the day of when people hear my company's name out there, they're like, hey, those guys at least listen when we fucking tell them that we're not adding anybody right now. They're not calling us every fucking 24 hours begging us for freight.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot has to do with your initial outreach and how you're articulating your message. When you're calling in on a heavy haul or, just an open deck customer, you're not asking for reefer freight, right? When you're calling into a trucking company, just run a simple search, whether it be on 411 or wherever. How many assets do they own? What type of equipment do they have? I'm sure that information is out there. There's so many people who are so tech savvy, but we receive phone calls, asking us just mindless things. How about saying, hey, this is Chris Jolly, from XYZ company, calling into your company because I see you have a truck posted in Charleston, South Carolina, and you're looking to run in this region where we have a load. Do you have capacity today or anytime this week? Because we have consistent freight from our customer. Same thing when I call in on a load, whether it be to a broker or whoever. Hey, this is Nick with Trusted Cartage calling on your load in Charleston, South Carolina, posted to go to Greenville, South Carolina. I have a 53-foot flatbed available 17 miles away. He's halfway empty. Please tell me more about your details. Okay, I'm not calling in as a carrier to a broker because, listen, you guys are assessing us just like we're assessing you when you call in. Do we want to do business? You're a salesperson at the end of the day. You're trying to sell the load with transparency and honesty, of course.
Yeah.
So what's going to move that needle? Why would I want to work with you? Why would you want to work with me? If I called you, Chris, and said, hey, listen, Houston to Phoenix, $2,700. Do you want our truck? You're going to say, well, who are you? What company are you with? What's your MC? Where are you empty? What time is your truck available? What size equipment do you have? I mean, the list can go on, right? But like, we get phone calls, just Chris, it's mind blowing. All right. And I understand there's different experience levels and so on and so forth. And I'm not perfect, but I think the overall objective of what we're trying to, say here is, how are you articulating your message? Are you concise? Are you clear? Are you getting right to the point? I understand time is of the essence, especially on the carrier side. We have trucks going down. This guy's in detention. He's delivering early. This guy's wondering if he can take off. We're trying to cover freight. Like there's so many variables that move on a daily basis. Same thing on the brokerage side when you're trying to cover loads, as well. But if you do come across a good carrier who's emailing you prompt and on time, you are receiving updates, why not schedule a time to call back and say, hey, listen, what markets do you penetrate? You sound like a great carrier. We would like to keep feeding that beast. And again, just come together and form that partnership.
I truly think it's that simple, Nick. I really do. I think that it's that, that follow-up is everything. I think most people are trained to just post loads. And again, like, I'm not sitting here ripping on load boards or anything like that, but like, that's what people I think are trained to do is it's like, hey, we got this load posted up, try and get a truck, try and get the cheapest truck. And sometimes they overlook the right truck for the longevity of it for $50. Because that's really what it fucking boils down to for the most part, man. Most people are trying to save $50 or $100. But I've talked about this a lot, and I'm going to say this again. There's a major difference out there that you can get from a long-term perspective. If I'm going to book somebody and I book Nick at $1,600 and he gets me a truck every Tuesday and Thursday from Charleston to Charlotte, every Tuesday and Thursday, I got him locked in like that, and I deliver that consistency. My customer naturally is going to reward me with more business. There's going to be a higher volume because brokers make their money in volume, as you know, unless you're in the specialized world, out there, like Micah and her husband run a multi-axle RGN operation. They're not churning and burning freight. It's a different business model. They can only go so far and so in a day with, the complexity of the freight that they haul. But if you're out there moving legal flatbed, legal dry van, legal reefer, any of that stuff, why aren't you working with that trucking company out there that will be there multiple times a week? Because that's where you're going to capture all the volume, all the growth that's out there.
Yeah. It's how you build your book of business as well. If you have, just like what you said, Chris, if you can shoot off 5 rate confirmations with one email or one phone call, that means you can go, target your spot market freight that you're trying to, cover as well. That's how you're going to make real money. That's when I was working at a brokerage, the guys who were making real money, they could send out rate confirmations like this without even picking up the phone because they knew exactly who was running what on what certain days. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, go ahead.
And a lot of people, they have a scarcity mindset. So there's brokers that we work with that we have dedicated runs with. We're not going to the customer as a small trucking company and trying to back solicit. Okay, so that's just a scarcity mindset. Think abundantly. Why would your customer want to work with me if I have 4 trucks, 10 trucks, whatever? If they have 100 loads that they need to cover, of course, you as the broker can seek out more capacity than we can give you. But if you can utilize 4 of Nick's trucks, there's 4 rate confirmations you can send off because his trucks are in those places on these specific days. So
dude,
just think about it.
I know, man. I'm right there with you. Dude, we got to keep this down to 30 minutes because just like I know you got shit going on. I got shit going on here. And
does anybody have any questions for us? Why we do have a minute or so left? I mean, Chris, I love it. Thank you so much for always having, guests on, continuing to do what you do. And hopefully you are receiving good feedback from those that tune into your show as well. Again, you're here for the people.
Dude, the feedback is phenomenal on this. The growth is phenomenal. The reach is phenomenal as well, right? And, because at the end of the day, like, I just want to help people out in business, right? Because I don't have it all figured out. But when I know some stuff and when I know what's working out there, I want to talk about it because I want to keep people in business. It's too easy to sit back and say, oh, the sky's falling and then not provide a solution. Anybody can do that. But like, just like everybody who tunes into this show, man, like I got fucking everything on the line, man. I'm not going to fail. And if I find a way And while I grow in business, I'm going to put all that information out there for people, because it's the application of this all that's the hard part, Nick. Everybody is going to hear this and listen to this and say, oh, that's such a great idea, I'm going to do that. And then short-term mentality comes in, that scarcity mindset comes in, and and then it's that shift out there. But Nick, how does anybody reach out to you? I'll have you back on, man, for sure. How does anybody reach out to you if they got some freight for you down in the Carolinas and stuff like that?
Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn or go right to our website. You can fill out a form there. Very easily accessible. Or email me at nick@trustedcartage.com.
Perfect. Sounds good to you guys. Well, hey, that's going to be it. Hey, and as always, you guys, we did drop a newsletter every Friday. Our newsletter gets released. If you guys want to sign up for that, go to thefreightcoach.com and register for that. I'm not going to spam you guys and auto sign all my contacts up. But if you guys want to jump onto that, go to thefreightcoach.com. It's going to be released every single Friday out there. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard today, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. Yeah,